Hello, this is Yarrow, and welcome to another episode of the Yarrow podcast. Once again, I am out and about with my phone recording. I'm doing a new trend of just dropping some audio content whenever something grabs my attention, or I feel like sharing with you guys, or if I learn something. So if there's any background noise, that's why I'm in the wild. So today I want to discuss something that's been getting quite a bit of discussion actually online, which is the recent interview between Tony Robbins and Alex Harmozi. I believe it was on Alex's podcast. You can have a listen to it there. I listened to it, and then I saw all these tweets and Facebook posts and people discussing the impact of, I guess, Alex's confessions in his vulnerability, transparency about what motivates him as an entrepreneur. So the kind of gist of it is Alex, and if you're not familiar with Alex and Tony, I'd be surprised, but Tony is a super well-known personal development speaker and very successful investor and entrepreneur as well, but he's mostly known as a personal development guy, and he's been doing it for decades. Alex is younger, about half the age of Tony, more recent, but is certainly the most well-known teacher, coach, speaker, and also a successful entrepreneur and investor today in the business space. So Alex just recently did a $100 million book launch, which is just one of many successful things he's done and made a lot of money. And Tony has shares in $12 billion worth of companies, so he's doing very well too. And the kind of the way these guys led the discussion was Tony started to do what Tony does, which is kind of break down the core motivations behind what's driving Alex, and what is it that would make him happy. And I guess the revelation that came out from this that led to so many people talking about it online was where Alex confessed a lot of his motivation as an entrepreneur comes from, which seemed to be from a very fear-based or anger-based place that kept him moving forward and pushing through the pain of being an entrepreneur. And I think the reason why that came up, and this is something I've also not grappled with, but I've certainly thought about, is what happens when you do reach the goal that you were so motivated to reach. In the case of a lot of people, that's a certain amount of money. Alex talked about just having his first $100,000 in the bank was the big breakthrough, but has gone on to now be worth several hundreds of millions of dollars, more money than he could ever need. And then you start to question, why do you do what you do? And Tony also worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he has many things that he's part of, but you can see his motivation is especially around feeding people in the world. And so they talked a lot about like finding your the bigger, deeper spiritual meaning or purpose behind the actions you take. And it's a privileged question to be able to ask yourself when you can do this from a place where you're not in any sense of lacking of basic needs. You have as much material wealth as most people on this planet will ever have, so they can come at this from a place of abundance financially and materialistically. And it can be a confronting question because you're no longer motivated by getting the monkey off your back or achieving a certain financial goal. And then you have to ask yourself, why am I doing any of this? Why do I start a business? Why do I want to put myself through all this to build something or create something and deal with all the day-to-day frustrations and challenges and problems you have to solve? And it was more Tony, of course, guiding Alex through why does he do what he does and where is he coming from. And I'll let you listen to the podcast, make your own opinion of that. But I wanted to share a point in my life that I confronted this, not to the extent that these guys have, because I don't have as much money as them, and I still don't know, what it'd be like to have the rest of your life money well and truly solved. I still feel like I need to make a certain amount of money to improve my lifestyle and feel completely financially free. But I certainly have been at a certain level of financial success pretty much since I was about 27, 28, which is the point where I started to make about $20,000 a month from my business. And at that point, I could do most things I wanted to do. All the food I could eat, all the traveling I could do, I could live anywhere, I could rent or even buy property. So I kind of started to confront this question a little bit in my early 30s. By that point, I'd put away about $1 million in net worth, between the houses, or for the house, the investment house, and just my business. So I felt even more safe, at least for the short term, and I started to question, what would I do next? Like, why do the business I'm doing? Why do a new business? Why do anything? It's a big question, and it's nice to be able to ask that question once you get past the basic needs are met phase. So I think that's really, if you're going to put this into phases, like a step one, you can't really ask this question to yourself on any significant level until you get past survival mode. You have to get past survival mode in order to feel like, okay, let me ask this question. I don't have to think about making money immediately. What would I do now if money wasn't the sole purpose behind it? And unfortunately, and perhaps, it's a rite of passage, but all entrepreneurs go through a phase where really the main motivation is purely money. You have to make bank for food and rent and survival. And often, the first business or the business you start then is not necessarily the one that you love, but it does hopefully, become an income source. And that's the most important thing. And for me, I've definitely had projects throughout my life where I haven't loved them, but I've loved needing to make an income from them, and I've enjoyed the process of building them. But I've certainly questioned whether, is this the thing I'd want to do if I had unlimited money? And more often than not, the answer was no. And that's a good question to ask yourself. Like, what would you choose to do if you already had unlimited money in your own personal net worth? How would you, maybe not unlimited, but you've got 100 million in the bank. What are you going to do for your day-to-day life? And everyone's answer is different, but I know for myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I'd want to build something. I'd want to help people, but I'd probably be able to do it on a bigger scale, having my own money to put into it to hire a team and do something a little faster and bigger than I might otherwise have done if I don't have any money in the bank, or not much, just enough to cover myself. So I think that's the first thing. And then when you get to the point where you're at Alex and Tony's situation, I don't know what that's really like. I think I'd be very okay with it, but I can understand how certain people struggle because they've spent their, most of their young life anyway, trying to get past this initial survival mode and then becoming rich. And once they become rich, the question is, what's next? Why keep pushing as hard as you are? So in my case, I don't feel it's a question I'd struggle with, but I can see why someone like Alex and many other entrepreneurs do. And maybe that's the reason why they're so successful too. They're so hungry, they're in so much pain, they're in so much anger, that they do push themselves to these big numbers. And maybe that's why I haven't reached 100 million yet, because I didn't have that pain and that anger to deal with. I don't believe that. I don't think you have to come from a place of pain and anger and to succeed at that level. I think you can do it in a joyous, abundant way. You still got to be hungry and motivated and perhaps a little bit unbalanced in your life, but I don't think you have to be doing it from a negative place, as it seems like Alex talked about. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I don't know, have you hit this point in your life? Have you made survival money so you've been able to make a decision on your next project without thinking about, I need to make this to live? Are you beyond that? Do you have millions of dollars in the bank so you can choose projects purely on the joy that they bring you and not so much about the money? Where are you at? Love to hear it. You can hit me up, send me an email, yarrow@yarrow.blog, and I'd love to hear from you. And I'll speak to you on the next show.